So every year we hold, we are very active, we are actively involved in the African Studies Association meetings, where we get together to deliberate, brainstorm, and look at issues that concern us as Nigerian scholars. So I'm very pleased to welcome you to this maiden Zoom edition of NSA gathering. This was, kind of necessitated by the pandemic that, had befallen us this year, making it impossible for us to meet in person. It's usually sweeter when we sit down and talk to each other. But this is still good enough because it's nice to see all the wonderful faces here. So I thank you for your time and I welcome you wholeheartedly. Now, the purpose of this gathering is to discuss the Ansars, I don't want to call it, riot. I don't want to call it, anything but what it is. It is the agitation by Nigerian youth to call attention to some of the abnormal situation that we have found ourselves in Nigeria. Many people are very familiar with what is going on in our dear own native land. And I applaud the youth for stepping up to call attention to some of those issues. So today, the NSA, being an association of like minds, we would like to hold a friendly, brotherly, sisterly conversation on those issues. And we invited a good number of youths to help us in that process. So I would like to welcome all of you. I hope it will be, worth our time. And I know it will because we have some very wonderful participants on board. At this point, I would like to hand over to the two wonderful ladies that will be kind of piloting the affairs of this afternoon. The Vice President, Dr. Chika Okoye, and Dr. Rita Ofieli, the Secretary, who graciously agreed to be one of the moderators. So we have two moderators who have planned this. So at this point, I would like you to please give a round of applause. This is how we clap in Zoom so that everybody will see your hand. So let's give a round of applause to these two ladies as I hand over to them. Over to you, ladies, and thank you. All right, unmute yourselves, please. Rita and Chika, I've handed over to you. Unmute yourselves.
Yes, Chika.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so this roundtable, we're going to do it in a little bit of a different way. Everybody will introduce themselves. My name is Chika Okoye. My PhD is in global affairs. So this is something that's very much on my mind, but I'll hand it over to Rita to talk briefly about the themes of our roundtable.
Okay. Just a minute, some housekeeping. People are waiting. I'll have to let them in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. Let me talk briefly about the rules. I have a little bell. So when you hear me ring the bell, it means you have 1 more minute to go. So listen out for the bell. We want everybody to have about 3 minutes to present their case. We're trying to encourage discussion and a conversation. And so I've introduced myself. I'll hand you over to Rita. She'll introduce herself and call on each person to introduce themselves individually. You'll have 1 minute to do that. Rita.
Okay. Thank you, Chika. I'm Rita Ofieli with Quinnipiac University in Connecticut. My background is in cultural anthropology. My research areas of interest are human rights, corporate social responsibility, gender power relations, and transnationalism. And I'm very honored to be here among such accomplished scholars, and activists. And I'm looking forward to having a very lively conversation with all of you. We have themes that we hope to touch on during this panel. The first is the historical context of youth activism. And then we're going to be looking to on-ground activists for their perspectives. We're going to also touch on reactions of elite and institutions to Ansars. And then we'll look at some of the outcomes so far, and then we'll sort of look to everybody to envision the future. And having said that, we would like everyone to introduce themselves, and I'll hand things back to Chika to start calling people to introduce themselves.
So I'd like to start first with Dr. Funke. Could you give a brief presentation of introduce yourself briefly? You have to unmute.
I'm Mojuba Olufunke Okome, and I'm a political scientist. My specialization is actually international relations and international political economy. And so I kind of transgressed into gender politics. It was absent in my training, and I was irritated by a lot of the stuff I was reading about African women. So I'm very provocative in my take on gender and African women. I also, my work is on democratization, the interplay between democratization and economic development. So what's happening now is very interesting to me. I also transgressed into transnational African studies, because as an African immigrant in the 1980s, I didn't see anybody studying us, you know. So I do research on transnational African communities, again, from a very interrogative perspective, because a lot of the ways in which people write about Africa is just ridiculously ignorant. Okay, so that being said, I'm happy to be here. I teach at Brooklyn College, where I've been teaching for the last 20 years. Before that, I was at Fordham University.
Thank you, Dr. Funke. Dr. Okoro?
Yes, my name is Susie Okoro. I teach at UMBC, and my areas in the Africana Studies Department, my areas of interest include gender studies, Africana studies, development studies, and policy. I also just completed an EMBA program in business administration. Actually, I'll be graduating tomorrow, even though I completely forgot about that. So the online graduation is tomorrow. So so that's I've always been interested in gender and development. My first, not my first book, but one of my most recent books is on gender and development, and I looked at the role of Igbo women in the diaspora in community development in southeastern Nigeria, which actually won the NSA Book Award in 2017 or 2018, yes. So, and Gloria Chukwu and I completed another book, which is in print, and it's also on gender, Igbo women and the Biafran War. So you see that my interest is in gender studies, and I look forward to working with all of you, please. Thank you.
Okay, and our next participant is Dr. Cyril Obi. Yes.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome, everyone.
Whichever one you is fine.
My name is Cyril Obi, and I work with the Social Science Research Council in Brooklyn, New York. As a program director of two programs, the African Peace Building Network and the Next Generation Social Sciences in Africa program. Before then, I worked at the Nordic Africa Institute, Uppsala in Sweden. And before then, I worked for over a decade at the Nigerian Institute of International Relations. In terms of Victoria Island, Lagos.
Now, affairs will not be
Nigeria.
relations.
Oh, sorry. Nigerian Institute of International Affairs.
Affairs.
Lagos, Nigeria. And in terms of my areas of interest, principally by training a political scientist, and I've done some research in international relations, environmental peace and security, development and governance, and basically I straddle between the worlds of academia and research management. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Obi. And our next person is Dr. Hadiza Kere Abdulrahman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hadiza Kere Abdulrahman. I'm a lecturer in inclusive education at Bishop Grosseteste University in the UK. So it's in Lincolnshire in the UK. But I research Northern Nigeria. So my research interest is in alternative education, Quranic schooling, especially Almajiranchi. I don't know how much you know about Northern Nigeria, but if you've been to any part of Northern Nigeria, then you would have seen Almajiri. So I research it. And one of the things, so very much like Dr. Funke said, I provocate. So I have problematized the way that it's been studied previously, just to kind of shed new light on it. So I think in a nutshell, I research alternative ways of viewing what knowledge is and what we have come to assume that knowledge is and why we assume that is the way that knowledge should be. That's my interest, purely in knowledge as experienced by us as post-colonial subjects, in a nutshell.
Thank you. Okay, our next participant is Ndi Kato. So,
hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Ndi Kato. I run the Nidari Foundation in Nigeria, where we focus for rights for women and other disadvantaged groups. I'm also a political analyst on Nigerian TV, an activist, and a young politician. Yes.
Wonderful.
I'm the first non-academic here, but my mom was a professor of English and African literature, so let me associate a little.
We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
okay, thank you. And Ayodele will be next. Ayodele.
He's on mute.
Yeah,
unmute.
You can unmute yourself. Rita, do you have to unmute
Okay,
her?
good.
Okay. Oh,
Okay,
Yes, okay,
yeah.
you got it.
There. Yeah, thank you. My name is Ayodele Olofintuade. I run Naija Feminista, an online intersectional magazine where we curate the voices of feminists and the queer community in Nigeria as they theorize the feminist movement in Nigeria. I'm a writer. I'm an author of several books. My last one is fiction. I interrogated lesbianism in Yoruba land, as it is in local. Actually, the book was located in Ibadan, and power dynamics within those kind of communities and the way Nigerian family is structured now. I'm also a researcher. I've done a lot of research and writing about the feminist movement in Nigeria. I've written about queerness, woman-to-woman marriage in Yoruba land. I've done a lot of research on colonial woman-to-woman marriage in Nigeria and how it was prescribed and all that. I'm also an activist. I don't see myself as an activist. I just see myself as a loudmouth and a provocateur and a troublemaker. So yeah, presently I'm working on a trilogy examining, or should I say questioning, how Efushiton Aniwura and Efunpori Oshuntinubu were historicized. I've done a lot of work on that. I'm writing my second book now on it. So yeah, hopefully by 2021, everything will be ready. Yeah, I write fantasy. I'm also a traditional practitioner. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next participant is Chinedu.
Thank you. Yeah.
Chinedu.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Ndewo unumine ekele mono. And that is in my native Igbo tongue, and I said you all are welcome. I greet you all. My name is Chinedu Nwokafo, son of Dr. Cosmas Nwokafo and Lola Catherine Nwokafo. I find it very pertinent to start with introducing my parents because who I am is a representation of them. I am a two-time graduate from the illustrious Morgan State University here in Baltimore, Maryland. I got my first degree in speech communications with a concentration in rhetoric and my second degree in project management. I have also been a civil rights activist here in the Baltimore, Washington metropolitan area for the last 10 years. And I am also somebody who is, as you can see, heavily involved in my culture. I am honored to be here. I have just recently, in my past, I have done international relations. I did a program at Harvard working on China-US relations, speaking on behalf of the African-American students who want to join in China-US relations. So thank you.
Thank you. And our next participant is Bulama.
Yeah, thank you very much, Auntie Chika, and good day, everyone. Bulama Bukarti is my name. I am an analyst at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, based here in London. And I am their Sub-Saharan Africa analyst, which in practice means researching into extremist groups' violence in Africa, trying to understand the root causes and helping policymakers, particularly in the West, on how to support local governments in sub-Saharan Africa to tackle extremist violence, especially by groups claiming to fight for Islam. I am also a senior associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies based in the US and a columnist with Daily Trust. I am currently studying for my PhD in law at SOAS, University of London. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next participant is Moses Paul, Mad Mo, as he is known. Mad Mo, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Unfortunately, I am here praying for light to come.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always angry. You can see that amongst all of us, I'm right here in the capital of Abuja, not far away from Aso Villa, but yet without light. I'm here praying that NEPA should bring light, you know, so you can understand where we stand here. I'm an activist. I'm a social and political and a spiritual coach. I have a PhD in environmental resource planning, especially with analytical research on rice paddy along the Middle Belt region of Nigeria. I'm engaged with a faith-based organization that is completely out of the box. We've carried out a lot of activities and programs in the northeastern Nigeria and across the Middle Belt, especially here in Abuja. I am very much involved in activism. I'm always in the forefront of the fires. Just to mention, on 2 occasions, I've interfaced with the Fulani headsmen. I've gone myself to rescue people who have been kidnapped in the Middle Belt area of Nigeria. So, so much to go with it, but this is where I am in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you so much. And Ademide, can you introduce yourself?
Sure, of course. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I have 2 classes right after this, so I'm kind of about to hang up. I'm a historian at the University of California, Riverside. My work is on 19th century Lagos. I've been a member of the Nigerian Studies Association for a very long time, and I do research on urbanism and historical cartography in Lagos specifically in the 19th century. Thank you.
Thank you. And Abosede. Abosede, George. You need to unmute yourself. Okay, let's move on. Could you introduce yourself?
Sorry, I assume I was just an observer.
Well, you can introduce yourself because people
Okay.
should know who you are.
For a purely Nigerian audience, I don't think I'll call myself Abdul. I'll call myself by my middle name, Babatunde Tijanko. I am from Sierra Leone, but my great-grandfather is from Abeokuta in Nigeria, so I still have the Babatunde as a middle name. I work with the African Studies Association and have a keen interest in Niger.
Okay.
Pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right then. So I think
we're is Fakria here with us?
I don't think she's here.
Yeah. Okay. She's supposed to be here, but she's
supposed to be.
Okay.
Okay. Well, welcome to all of you, and I guess we could go straight into the first theme. So we've broken everything up into several different themes, and we'll go to our scholars to get some historical context surrounding youth activism. So first of all, we'll go to Dr. Suzy Okoro, who will give us a brief history of youth political activism in Nigeria.
Thank you again. My brief introduction will just narrowly highlight the relevance of activism in political movements, not just in Nigeria, but all over the world. As far as we know, as historians, we know that after the colonial masters took over Africa, they kind of left legacies that created a lot of vacuum in so many post-colonial societies. And the vacuum that they created, and that some of our grandfathers of the post-colonial era, those who took over from the colonialists, did not do much to kind of establish structures that will work favorably for the people. And as a result of that, a number of problems arose, which have continued to kind of affect and influence the way we do things, both at the political and other levels in Nigeria. Now, activism in Nigeria is not a new thing. It's not new at all. And one of the things that our youths have tried to do was to get a voice. They've always had voices, but those voices have always been muffled by both individuals who have held on to power for so long that it makes it difficult for the aspiring younger members of the society to play active roles in the political realm of things. So when we see our younger ones, demand for a voice in the society, they know exactly what they are advocating. They are fighting structures that have been put in place to marginalize, to suppress, to intimidate, and to kind of muffle what they know that is going wrong in the society and what needs to change. This happened immediately after independence happened just before the Civil War. It happened. Somebody like me, I participated in a movement that protested when the Babangida administration wanted to take the IMF loan. I appeared on the covers of Daily Times on the front page cover in 1984. I was in front of a military tank and they pictured me, my mom almost passed out. So you see that, activism has always been there and some of us have always participated. But this time around, we are hoping that we will translate the activism into actionable processes that will lead to a better Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Okoro. Dr. Obi, you're up next. And Dr. Obi will be talking about protests, activism, suppression, and networks of activism.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chika. When I saw your message, I was very frightened because that is quite a mouthful. Yes, but having said that, I think in terms of activism and protest, when you look at Nigeria's history, there are two faces to this. There is what you call the global and the international dimension, and there is the national or internal dimension. And you will see that there was a sense in which historically activism and the protest movement was in a way linked to Pan-Africanism at the global level. And you will see that a lot of our nationalists, who are then youth, participated in a lot of the Pan-African movements. And they played a key role in mobilizing for decolonization and independence. You could refer to that as the early phase. After independence, we also had a protest movement. A lot of it crystallized around mobilization against military dictatorship, which again came to a head when the June 12 elections were nullified and the youth particularly resisted. But even before that, the National Association of Nigerian Students and the student movement played a very key role in the struggle against military dictatorship on a continuous basis. So we have a history. And then what Dr. Okoro alluded to, the anti-SAP protests. And more recently, we have had the Not Too Young to Run movement, the movement to mobilize for the release of the Chibok girls, and some of it were youth. But why is it that it's really the youth? I think we need to also pay attention to that, to contextualize why the youth are actually very active. I think there are several reasons for this. In terms of the demographics, the youth tend to be more or less in the majority across our countries in Africa. They also stand the most to lose in terms of the prevailing socioeconomic conditions, which are not really very encouraging for them. They also tend to be very tech savvy. They understand the use of social media. They are able to operate freely across borders and boundaries. And they dare to dream. They believe that a future world, an alternative world is possible. They also listen to other movements in other parts of the world, whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement in the US, whether it's a protest across Europe, whether it's a protest in Algeria, Tunisia, the Arab Spring, Guinea, Mali, Sudan, Zimbabwe, Ethiopia. The list is endless. There is activism across our countries in Africa. And permit me to try to contextualize this. There are two things that are happening. I will call them globalization and its discontents. That globalization is reproducing the world, it's transforming the world, but it's also causing a lot of havoc and creating a lot of inequality, inequity, injustices, marginalization, and pauperization of the majority of people, both in terms of relations between countries and relations within countries. But one of the greatest things that we need to flag is the failure or the inability of multi-party democracy to address these issues, which impinge upon the very lives of people across the world. And so what we are seeing and what we are calling activism and protest is actually a struggle for freedom, equality, and justice. And it's a struggle that is almost eternal. And what we have seen in the context of what we are talking about now is that this is a struggle that has been taking place even before Nigeria became independent. It is a struggle that continued after independence and then reached a peak when the military had actually established decades of dictatorship. And I think that what is now coming around is that the youth are beginning to express dissatisfaction with the fact that what they have, the conditions in which they live, the marginalization they suffer, their grievances and concerns are not being adequately addressed. And they are, as they've always historically done, pointed to these issues and are agitating for the power to transform society positively. In other words, you could talk about the quest for the unfinished revolution. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Obi, that was excellent, but a bit lengthy. Our next participant is Dr. Funke, and she will be talking about contextualizing gendered activism, past versus present.
So I thank you very much. And since Dr. Obi took so much time, as a woman, I demand on behalf of the women equal time.
Yes.
My comments would be based on a paper that I actually wrote in the last few years of the 20th century. It's titled Unknown Soldier, Women's Radicalism and Activism and State Violence in 20th Century Nigeria. So I kind of want to, so we're now talking about Sorosoke and Benudake and how, the older generation never did anything worthwhile. And I want to challenge that perspective by looking at women's history. But, this is a long-winded paper. It's like almost 70 pages long that I wrote. That's also a book chapter that's shorter. So I'm starting with Olufunmilayo Ransom Kuti because of the unknown soldier factor, because her son Fela eulogized her in that song where he was talking about the brutality of Nigeria's post-colonial state under a military dictatorship that was headed by General Olusegun Obasanjo, who is now, he has changed his uniform. He's a Democrat, right? But I want to say also that the form of the state that we have is a colonial sort of state. There's also a lot of militaristic ethos in our state that favors very draconian responses to citizen agitation for either freedom or, better quality of life or, a better form of democracy. And all our post-independent governments, including those who now criticize the current person, have been guilty of this. So, non-soldier, Fela eulogized his mother. It was in 1979. And what many people were aware of then was, Fela's mother is an important figure in Nigerian politics. But, I think it's tragic because we tend to really not pay attention to the contributions of women. So what happened was Fela's mother, in the melee of the military occupying Kalakuta Republic, they threw her out the window. She eventually died from the injuries. Now, this was a woman who was a Fabian Marxist. She opposed injustice vehemently in her life. She opposed abuse of power and racism, colonialism, imperialism, and neocolonialism. So one of the confrontations that she had was between her and the Alake of Abeokuta, Sir Ladapo Ademola. So here's what the Alake said. I could not hate Mrs. Ransom Kuti then, and I can't hate her now. Although she continues to cause me a great deal of trouble, because I suppose I admire her guts. My only regret is that she's using her guts wrongly. With a bit more level-headedness, there's nothing the little woman couldn't do for Abeokuta and for Nigeria. Then he also said, there's no satisfying Mrs. Ransom Kuti. Right now, she's up to another devilry. She's opposed to women of Abeokuta paying water rates. I'm sure that if she would devote as much time to agitating for progressive measures as she does to everything that's conducive to disorder, she would become the greatest woman in Abeokuta. Nay, in Nigeria. So we gave, okay, so this is what Mrs. Ransom Kuti said. So we gave a hell of a time to the chiefs, the government, to all those who were responsible for the systematic pauperization of the mass of the people. The 1920s Igbo Women's War. The Igbo Women's War did not have one leader. It was a popular uprising. It could have become a political movement if it wasn't for the really brutal suppression by the colonial state. And I think it was also a manifestation of that unknown soldier phenomenon, because state-deployed soldiers shot and killed numerous women who were demonstrating against colonial repression. Through their indigenous organizations, Igbo women spread the word from the hamlets, villages, towns. They organized an uprising against this injustice, and that resistance was well organized. They attacked all symbols of British imperialism. Efusheto Aniwura and Madame Tinubu are also women who were valiant. You know, I wouldn't talk about them. So what I see is an absolutist state. And that absolutist state limits the scope and effectiveness of Nigerian women's activism, because women's activism occurred within this kind of state where there are no checks and balances against the excesses of the very brutal state. And that state would shoot at you and kill you if you defy it. And we're seeing that now too. The state is also very repressive. And this has limited Nigerian women's activism. Because, you know, sometimes people say, well, those who run away today will live to fight another day. We've had a lot of turbulence in Nigerian politics. Naked state violence is the norm. Fighting state repression can make the unknown soldier come and get you. And it's extremely dangerous. So you find Nigerian women then using a lot more conciliatory measures, including willing to be co-opted, thinking they can change the system from the inside. And so, you know, liberal democracy, multi-party democracy is something that the women have gotten involved in, and we can see how they're being treated. 6% representation at the National Assembly. So disrespect, lack of acknowledgement of women's contributions to national development. So let me also kind of say that women's group action against colonialism, against the post-colonial state is usually not just to defend the interests of women. It's about community. It's about freedom. So you see Mrs. Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, the Aba and Abeokuta women engaged in group action against the colonial government, and they were acting as a corporate group. They built they tried to build a movement. At both sides, women's organizations, traditional ones, were organized, mobilized, and deployed using modes of resistance that, quote, express their disapproval and secure their demands by collective public demonstrations, including ridicule, satirical singing, dancing, and group strikes. Nigerian women also exercised collective associational power as part of mass movements. This was their effort to ensure that their voices were heard in the during the colonial era, during the post-colonial era. So you saw demonstrations against taxes and rumors of taxes. by both the Egba women and the Abeokuta women, the Lagos Market Women's Association, you know, Alaja Humuani Alaga, who led the textiles sellers in Ibadan, and so forth. There was even a Nigerian Women's Party, and many people don't know, you know, or if they know it, they don't know the significance of it. So I see an illustrious history of women's political activism and leadership, and their contribution is documented. I think, unfortunately, you know, mostly by people who are, you know, non-Nigerian women have done the most, you know, influential books. But this also is about the politics of the academy. I won't go into it. According to Mrs. Ransom Kuti, Nigerian women suffered from diminished economic and political power due to colonialism, and ordinary women could and should use indigenous methods, mechanisms, and strategies of organizing for social, economic, and political power. She took her own advice. She mobilized the Abeokuta women and Nigerian women to resist the corrupt, abusive, and draconian state policies. And let me also just end, because I think I'm going on too much. There was a Federation of Nigerian Women's Societies. This was a group of 400 women who came together in 1953. They represented Nigerian women's organizations in 15 provinces. They had a 2-day conference, and they produced a position paper about what they want for Nigerian women, for the Nigerian nation, and for, you know, I think their communities.
Okay.
I think we need to know history. We need to acknowledge that women, if we don't have a gendered lens, we are going to miss out on a lot. We're seeing some of this kind of activism by young women today. It is not new, you know, it is part of a tradition. And so I think that tradition should be connected to. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Now I'm shutting up.
Yeah, Dr. Funke, that you took more than double time.
You've come into the time of other speakers, but thank you very much. Very well contextualized. Chika, I think we need to now move on to our activists. We have boots on the ground, activists in Nigeria that are very much involved in Ansars. We'd like to call on them. We have Dr. Mo, also known as Mad Mo, Moses Ogidi, who's right there now in Abuja. And he has already talked to us about some of the issues involved. We'd like to call on you, Dr. Mo, to first tell us how the Ansars movement started, and then how you became involved in the movement. And then we're also going to call on the other activists to tell us also how they became involved in the movement. So Dr. Mo, please lead the discussion on that.
Okay.
Dr. Mo, are you still with us?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Yeah. First and foremost, I think it's important to state that there's always been activism going on in very small scale in Nigeria. I will recount even about a month ago, due to the killings in Kaduna State, in central Nigeria, a few of us came out, you know, to begin to demand that the government respond adequately to the killings that have been going on there. For those of us who are abreast with what has been happening, especially with the middle belt of Nigeria. So this has been an ongoing thing. We have been involved. I've had to do different events and activities. We have been out on the street, but just in small groups, very handful, you know, up until this recent overwhelming, massive outpouring of young people all over the place due to the brutal killings and harassment of the Ansars all over the country. So it's been ongoing, you know, but again, with the protracted ASU strike that has continued, you know, unending, with the unbearable condition of both underemployment and unemployment in the Nigeria that has risen above 55% right now as we speak. It has also given the base structure for which a lot of young people, you know, came out in mass over this. And with the continuous killing and the involvement of the header-farmer clashes, which is really just something that if you have, if you understand what has been happening, especially within the middle belt of Nigeria, it has been something that is completely off the narrative that has been painted for a lot of people to see. You know, for someone like me who has been on the ground, and I mean, when I mean being on the ground, I have been involved with interfacing with these people who have been killing people. I wish the light was up for you to see the way I have tactically had to dread my hair because I've been interfacing with these people. You know, it is a complete genocide that has been going on in the Nigerian system. And at this point, there is no glossing over the things that have been happening. It's just land grabbing, genocide by a particular tribe, you know, that has overwhelmed the entire system, which became very prevalent with the emergence of President Muhammadu Buhari. And we can see how even the entire security architecture of Nigeria is being completely overwhelmed and taken by this particular tribe. And I'm saying it with all honesty and with all, you know, bearing my out here. Because again, so with the Ansars, with the killings that have been going on, we have, I'm a co-founder of Mamudondu. We have had interferences where we've sat down with IG about 4 or 5 months ago, even in the heat of the COVID-19 shutdown. These people have continuously interfaced with young people. We've had people who have been disappearing from different locations, even in Abuja, in Lagos, in Benue, in different places, you know. And because you know certainly that there's a complete disconnect and a distrust between the public and government, there is nothing you're going to do. You will never have justice. You will never have equity, you know. So because of that, we already know that the government, there's a failure. There's nothing you're going to do. And so this is what gave the backdrop. This is what led to this massive outpouring, you know, that we see today across the nation with the Ansars movement.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Mo. That's very well contextualized. We'd like to call on another activist. Chinedu Nwokafor has asked to go next. So please, Chinedu, could you speak to about the movement? And then we'll call on, we still have to call on Ndi Kato, Audu Bulama Bukati. So please, let's try to keep to the 3 minutes per panelist. Thank you very much. Chinedu, please.
Thank you. I will do my best to keep to the 3 minutes and please hold me accountable. I'm so excited to be here and I'm glad to hear what Dr. Moses said. I am an activist in America with the African American group, okay, with the African American contingent here in America, but I'm still a Nigerian. And I see major similarities between the Nigerian issue and the issue here in the Americas. But more importantly, the issue that is happening in Nigeria, it goes beyond SARS. And I think in 1947, when Jaja Nwachukwu, Fumi Kuti, Ransom Kuti, and Adodoyin went to London to seek for independence, it was independence for a better greater Nigeria. But the issue with Nigeria as a whole, at least geographically, Nigeria by a geographical stance was created to only benefit one group. That is simple geography. It has nothing to do with, we can get to ethnic group later, but just by geography, Nigeria was meant to benefit the North. And between the decades after, going for independence and, the three different groups, we had the Northern group, we had the East with Azikiwe, and we had the West, who was the opposition at the time. What ends up happening is it created a vacuum of two groups, North versus South. We can go into details at a later time, but the major point is, in doing so, a lot of, it's funny when we say youth and we say elder in Nigeria, in these days. Most of those who are elders in Nigeria now, who are enjoying big money, were once youth. Obasanjo was my age when he was very big in the military. So the major question when it comes to youth have always been in the forefront of any movement in history, if you read it in any country, in any nation. My issue with Nigeria now is there is a huge vacuum, as has been mentioned, where is the youth of Nigeria have no future. They have no job. People are going to school, getting degrees, but can't find work, or school is on strike for one reason or another. And we all know that's due to some of the economic strifes that a lot of our political leaders over the last 5-6 decades have, the things that they have done. So I think with what's going on in Nigeria right now, it is about time that the youth are standing up, as they have been, to take Nigeria back for the common man, where it's not just our ministers and our politicians who are entrenched with all the oil money of Nigeria. It's time that that money is, divided equally to all. And I think a lot of my American colleagues, as I come to a close, are very proud of what Nigerian youth are doing, because the cries of the Nigerian youth are the same cries of the African-American youth here in the States. Thank you.
Thank you, Chinedu, for your perspectives. Thank you very much. I'd like to call on Ndikato to please, as a boot on ground in Nigeria, tell us how you became involved with the movement and your take on it.
Well, prior to the Ansars movement, I've been an activist for quite a while. This is not the first time I'm seeing this level of brutality. Since my early 20s, I'll say mid-20s, but my early 20s, we started writing articles, realizing we had a voice. That was the onset of social media, and we're lucky to be the particular young group that caught on at that moment. 2015, I witnessed one of the worst horrors anyone could ever imagine. And it was via social media, just scrolling down my phone, and what would I see? Nigerian army had attacked Gyalasu in Zaria, and it was on the allegation that some members of the Islamic movement of Nigeria blocked the road and touched the general's chest. And over the course of 3 nights, that period, Shiites in Nigeria, Shiites are a sect in Islam, and the Islamic movement of Nigeria falls under Sheikh Zakzaki. They were attacked, brutally murdered. Some were murdered on the street. We followed them to their place of worship, 3 different areas, and just killed them, buried them in unmarked graves. And since then, I understood that night, the first night of the attack, I remember responding to someone who was asking how people could justify that. And I said something that has come to define what is happening in the Nigerian state right now. I said, something about brutality, it's always enough to go around. This brutality will go around. And since then, I don't see any part of society that this brutality has not touched. It was a very, very brutal thing. And it was like a lot of Nigerians, because with the Lekki massacre, people have been, oh my God, I cannot believe the Nigerian state can do this. But I know, I've seen them do this before. I come from Southern Kaduna. we know the relationship we have with the Nigerian state, especially when we are in danger and you see soldiers approaching. You don't think that those soldiers are going to come and save you. You know that you're going to get more antagonism. So it was that knowledge that kept pushing and pushing. And so when I saw young people on Friday in Abuja, I started hearing people taking to the street. I saw Renu go to sleep at Alausa. But in Abuja, it was that young people came out on Friday and they were attacked right in the state capital. It was hot water cannons. It was all kinds of shooting. It was tear gas. We're like, no, in Abuja, in the center of Abuja, for those of us who have been protesting for a while, you know, government hates us, but we have come to that point where we all know each other. You don't like us, but we know each other at this point, right? So I remember some of us reached out to the government, and I reached out to the National Human Rights Commission that day. And they're like, no, everything is fine. The IG didn't know his men were going to do that. So we went the next day. My first going out was actually as a human shield. I saw these young people in their 20s. And I remember when I was that age, and I was finally glad that this generation was, you know, I might be at the tail of millennials, but I'm still one, right? And I was glad that the people under me were coming out to protest. And knowing that, okay, some of us will be there. I was there. Aisha Yesufu was there. Yelesha, a group of people came out, but it was that we actually erroneously thought that we had spoken with the Nigerian government, or people who work with the Nigerian government. I spoke with some people who work in Aso Rock. Oh, you will be fine. It's nothing. It's great. And by that evening, we were tear gassed. I'm asthmatic. They were tear gassing us, following us with water cannons into traffic. Like, it was clear that they wanted us fall into that traffic and for harm to come onto us. So after that day, it was then I realized, okay, I'm not human shield here. I'm here and they are trying to kill us, and we are going to keep pushing for our rights. So I'm just speaking specifically to the question that was asked and hoping that I keep to time, but that was my ground zero of the Ansars movement, and from then on kept going.
Thank you very much, indeed. Before we move on to our next theme, I would just like to ask Audu Bulama Bukarati and Ayodele a question each. Ayodele, as an activist that's on ground in Nigeria, can you please tell us about the role? Ndi talked about it a little bit. Could you expand on the role of women in this movement, and how you're involved in the movement also?
Thank you so much. We all know on this panel that there's no movement, there's no change, there's no push or spearheaded or funded by women. And by the time the historians come and historicize it, they will erase the women and remove them from the whole thing. The protests didn't take me by surprise, because there's been a lot of protests online. But it did take me by surprise because one of the things that I've always known is, like, a lot of the people that are talking online are from the middle classes, and they do have a degree of comfort. But by the time, like, the activists hit the streets, the brutality, like Indy said, had reached all of us. They shared it to all of us, every single one. It had touched us. So how did I join the protest? I think it was on the third day. It was definitely, I think I came in after NDD. I called her and she was having an asthma attack. And she was, like, literally dying on the phone, and I didn't know what to do. And then a bunch of young queer people called me and said, oh, we're going to protest tomorrow. I said, hell no, you're not going to protest tomorrow without me, because somebody has to be there to protect you. And like Inji said, there are like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds. And I'm like, no. We're all going together. And when we get there, they start shooting at all of us. Because, I mean, I've been protesting since God knows how long. Protesting
Are we losing sound?
We're having
I think we are losing Ayodele.
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe
we'll circle back to her.
Yes.
The Abuja kidnappings of the Ansars and in the
Ayodele, you're breaking up. So maybe we'll circle.
All right, cool.
We'll circle back.
All right, cool.
Okay.
All right, cool.
Okay. Let's move on to Audu Bulama Bukati. Audu, are you still with us?
You have to unmute.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Could you speak to, and just listening to the different perspectives on the movement, how do we keep the youth movement from being fractured by divisive narratives and actions such as religious, ethnic divisions, the labeling of some groups as educated, uneducated, hoodlums, miscreants? The movement itself has been described as grassroots and organic. How do you see the youth sort of moving forward without fracturing?
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much. Very fascinating discussions already. Thank you very much for having me here. I have learned a lot from our historians and activists that have spoken. I think the way to keep this movement together and keep the momentum and keep it going is to organize, strategize, and plan. And also have a clear leadership, because what we have now, and I think it worked, for the first round of protest, but it might not work for the future, is we called it a leaderless protest. But I think I favor the perspective, the idea that it was a distributive leadership. It was a movement where you had local leaders everywhere organizing things and planning things and actioning them. So I think the first thing is to organize, strategize, which then requires a leadership to do it. Now, the second thing is defining the enemy, the oppressor, understanding the enemy and working towards the enemy rather than working one section of the country, working against another, or one ethnic group or religion working against the other. I think the Nigerian political class is very good at exploiting ethno-religious fault lines as pitting us. I mean, it's very good at pitting us against one another, and we saw this playing out during the protest and now after the protest. So I think keeping on track, understanding that the poverty we are fighting, the human rights abuses we are fighting, the inequality we are fighting do not have religion, section, or language or tribe, and affects everyone in the country. The over 51% of Nigerians that live under extreme poverty are Muslims, are Christians, are Northerners, are Southerners, are Igbos, Yorubas, Hausas, and everyone. And when the politicians still in Abuja, when their children wine and dine in London and Washington, they don't see themselves as Igbos and Yorubas or Christians and Muslims. They are united in stealing our resources. They are united in oppressing us. The police officer that kills Nigerians on the street doesn't differentiate between Yorubas and Igbos and Christians and Muslims. And I think it is that consciousness that we must continue to keep. It is that understanding that we have a common enemy, and it is that enemy we are out to fight, and we are out to fight them in the legally acceptable way that we must continue to do. And I think finally, Nigerians in diaspora have a big role to play in the strategy and in keeping the momentum going. We know that there are protesters that are currently in custody. We know that there are some that have had their passports confiscated. There are others whose accounts have been frozen by the CBN illegally. There are others in Lagos, for example, reported by Premium Times, that are still going about with injuries because hospitals have been harassed not to treat them. And I think we owe them a duty. It is a betrayal if we supported the protests in the beginning, and now we have our brothers and sisters in custody with injuries, them with a frozen account and we keep quiet. And I think the diaspora community has a big role to play there, because if the Nigerian government has the police and everyone to frighten and terrorize Nigerians on Nigerian streets, they can't arrest us in London or Washington or Berlin or other places of the world. And I think we owe them a duty to continue.
Yes.
Very well said. Thank you.
Thank you
very much, Bulama. Chika, I've covered the questions under the second theme, so we should move on to reactions of the elite and the institutions within Nigeria. I'll let you take those questions, and so Chika.
All right then. So our third theme is reactions to all this activism, and I would like to ask Ayodele, how would you describe the coverage or lack thereof of Nsars in the local media in Nigeria? How is it really being covered in the different outlets?
It's as expected. NBC, or like the arm of the government that censors, the NBC, I think they're called. They have gone around threatening people and threatening.
Okay.
It was suggested that you might have better luck just using audio and not video.
Just use audio or use your phone.
At that station,
Okay.
Try turning off your video and see if it works better.
Okay.
Yeah, turn the video off. Okay, let's see.
All right. How do I sound now? Can you hear me?
Wonderful, yes.
Yeah, you sound
fantastic. Okay, I feel better now. All right, cool. Okay, so it's actually Arise TV, only Arise TV, that has been covering the movement truthfully. Channels TV, all the other TV, the TVC, people used to look up to tell the truth about the movement didn't. The newspapers were a mess. Punch didn't start reporting the truth of the movement until one of their staff members got brutalized by the police. And then a lot of disinformation. But the amazing thing that I've discovered is the grassroots, the radio. In grassroots, I think the NBC, like the government is so obsessed with the class divide that they forget that there are grassroots radio stations. So those ones have been reporting what is going on in Yoruba, at least where I'm from. And they've been quite very vocal, and they've been talking about it. For example, in Ojo, the police shot somebody, and then protesters went out and burnt down a couple of police stations. It was on the Yoruba news that I heard the truth of what actually happened at Ojo, because the news was people hoodlums went out and started burning down police stations, and they didn't mention how the police came out and were shooting at unarmed protesters, as they've been doing all along. So that was the most surprising part of it. And before the end of before people decide to at least suspend the protest for now, I've started hearing the women in markets speaking Yoruba and saying it's time for them to go out, that it's time for them to go out, that they have to go out. And they were saying it's in Yoruba. So
okay.
I
think, that is really interesting to note. I would like to ask Chinedu, how has he seen the international coverage of this? Because he's here in the United States hearing about this. What has been his impression on the coverage?
So my interpretation on the coverage is, again, I have a degree in speech communications, so I understand how media works. And my interpretation of the coverage here in America is lackluster, if not planned. I said it to my friends that in theory, the way they talk about the Ansars movement is almost like how they present Africa when they say donate $3 a day and it feeds a kid. It's just to build up emotions for a brief moment, and then the next big story comes. There's been a lot of celebrities who have gotten involved, but just like how the media works in America, it's a very temporary feeling. And that's probably due to what we call information overload in the communication world, where there's just so much information coming in that you can't stand on one thing because more and more is coming in, which is what happens in America when, for example, an unarmed Black man or woman gets shot. We're crying about it by Monday, and they shoot another one by Friday. So then we cry about that. If that keeps going on, in 1 month, you can't even remember who got shot. So that's what's going on with the Ansars here. Like, it was a hot topic, but now it's not. Now the election is the new hot thing. So in theory, like, the Ansars movement has just moved to the back of the head of the American people, which is dangerous, in my opinion, because, like I said earlier, the plight of what the youth are asking for in Nigeria is what almost all the youth across the world are asking for. And I think it's important when it comes to grassroots movements, it's actually important that grassroots movements internationally stay intertwined so that they could have more success in their movements, so they can coordinate their movements. And I'm copying that ideology basically off of how military moves. If you see now, the United States military will do a joint military exercise with Japan, with China, with Saudi Arabia. This way they can coordinate both of their efforts to help defeat enemies. The same thing goes for grassroots movements. We need all of our grassroots movements, the Black movement here in America and the Ansars movement in Nigeria and all other movements that are very, very much intertwined over the same issue. Okay. We need them to formalize a collective.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, please. May I add something to what he just said? Just 1 second.
Okay.
What you're saying about coverage is very, very true, because I left for Nigeria on the 10th of October, and I did not know anything about Ansars. This is very embarrassing, until I got into Abuja. And I am constantly, watching CNN, NBC, PBS. I wake up with the news and I go to sleep with the news. It had zero coverage. It was only after I got to Abuja, then my nieces that came to pick me up said, oh, today is a quiet day, that Ansars protests are not active today. I'm like, what is Ansars? And they said, oh, didn't you hear about it? So we're not going to expect, I don't want us to expect the media in the US to focus on African affairs, because they will not. It will not sell.
Okay, let's move on, because we have some other issues to look at. Dr. Mo and Bulama, I'd like you to talk about the attitude of the government towards the Nsars movement. How have they reacted to it? I mean, they have tried very seriously to separate the movement, trying to say it is Southerners moving this movement, trying to divide the youth up. So could you both comment on the government's response to the Ansars movement? Let's start with Madmo. Madmo, are you there? Okay, so let's go to Bulama Bukati.
Yeah, I think some of us have started touching on this. It was first the typical reaction, which was an attempt to suppress. And we saw in the first few days, as Indika said, Indy said, the police using tear gas, hot water cannons, and even live bullets against protesters. But when that continued to cause outrage online, then you saw the president and the Inspector General of Police making the usual empty promises they do. But what also went on in the north was the government trying to divide the country, because there was this active misinformation on social media that this is a Christian Southern movement out to topple a government that is headed by a Muslim Northerner. There were even pro-SARS protests that were sponsored by the government. And I say sponsored by the government because even here in London, I know protests that were sponsored by governments, and PhD students who are my friends would later tell me how much they were given to sponsor the protests in support of government. So for example, the last time Buhari was here, there was a protest against him, and then you saw a counter protest the following day, but it was sponsored by the presidency. And that was exactly what we saw in the North, a protest sponsored by governors or by police officers. I know in Kano when there was an anti-SARS protest, and then another protest was sponsored by SARS officers to counter that. And we saw part of that in the North, and we saw the media being sponsored also by politicians to amplify the protest that was held by just a dozen of people or so in support of SARS. So you saw this narrative that there is a pro-SARS protest in the North, but I can tell you it wasn't the majority opinion. But like I said, the disinformation did work in some quarters of the North. We know Nigeria and how it is when religion and section are brought into a particular issue. It polarizes, and then, of course, what made that disinformation campaign effective was some prominent faces that are known for, to call for the division of Nigeria or for Buhari to resign. People like Showere was in the protest. And so those who were sponsoring that disinformation campaign used those faces to show Northerners that, look, these people are not, don't mean good for Nigeria. They are out to destroy Nigeria. So you saw that, of course, Northern voices on Twitter and on Facebook countered that, and we succeeded to a large extent, but I wouldn't say they didn't succeed to some extent in the campaign.
Okay, thank you so much. It looks like we've lost Magmo, maybe the lights, and he didn't have power in his device, who knows? Yeah. Anyway, just a side comment. It seems as if everybody got their information about this movement from social media. So it makes great sense that the government is trying to shut down access to social media. So I think we can move on to the next theme in our program. We're looking at outcomes and what we can do by moving on from here.
Okay. Okay.
So Rita will handle that aspect.
Okay. Thank you, Chika. We've all been talking about social media. Even in the chat, there's a lot about social media going on. And an outcome of this movement that has, in some media outlets, it's been described as Nigeria's sort of Arab Spring, just because it's been organized on social media. There's just so much about it on social media that it rendered the traditional type of news outlets almost irrelevant to the movement. An outcome of this use of social media is that the government is claiming that the Ansars activists on social media are a threat to national security. This has spurred Lai Mohammed, who I believe is the Minister of Information and Culture, to call for regulations to curb the spread of quote unquote fake news and to sanitize social media. So I'm going to ask for the contextualization of what sanitizing social media could mean for the Ansars movement and the Nigerian population in general. And I'll call on Dr. Mo just got back in. Dr. Moses, Dr. Mo, are you with us now? Oh, okay. Maybe not. I thought
He's muted.
Yes, I'm here now. Is a network.
Okay. I was asking the question about
I'm here now.
activism. Okay, I was asking activists that are on ground. Ndi, Kato, and Dr. Mo, maybe you can both speak to this. Lai Mohammed has called for regulating social media because he sees the use of social media by the youth as a threat to national security. He's calling for the sanitizing of social media. Could you contextualize what that means for us? Ndi, Kato, if Dr. Mose.
Let me go with that. Prior to the Ansars protest, I mean, earlier this year, when it looked like 2020 still had some promise, yes. They had the push for the social media bill was in full gear. And I remember we fought that. There was the AIT Town Hall Live, where I was there, Professor Chidi Odinkalu, Hamzat Lawal, and we're on the panel with the senators from Niger State, one for the hate speech bill and then the one for the social media bill. And we've done the rounds on media too, and it had been very clear at the time, look, these platforms can self-regulate. We're seeing what Twitter has been doing, for example, with respect to fake news, with respect to hate speech, respect to the American elections. They have banned Steve Bannon and have been putting, pointers on Trump's tweets, signifying that these are fake news and all of that. And so these platforms can do just that. And we're telling them that excuse it doesn't sell. You are just trying to repress the freedom of expression. And so now we have seen the government shaken more than ever before. And let me express one a feeling of hopelessness that I have right now, because the Nigerian government is shaken. Like, they are very shaken. I was speaking to political leadership from another West African country, and these people were saying the Nigerian government has been shaken by this. They have not seen this kind of thing in recent times, and they don't know what to do. And it's kind of like, for something to hit you so hard and you still do not think to change things towards the positive, like give something concrete, just be at that line where we'll give this to pacify. And it's just nothing. We're just seeing more brutality. People are afraid, and the response to the fear is more brutality. The response to that is burn the nation down. And so here we are again back at the social media bill table. And it's very clear that, look, we have fought this before, but now the new dimensions that have been added to it is people not understanding what this is and the government taking advantage of it. Of course, part of this was also an intergenerational fight where, Professor Mojo had pointed rightly that young people were calling out the older generation and saying, look, we grew up under you and we felt that there was a certain level of docility. And the government is hanging on to that. They have fed their trolls. Their trolls are out here actually spreading this fake news, actually adding to all of the chaos. And then from behind, they're trying to use their powers. Lai Mohammed is asking, he's stating that, okay, if there is something that can shut down social media from time to time. And all of this has come back to this, that this is the number one place that young people actually have the freedom. And that is the difference between us and actually the generations before that. Look, this platform was not available. We have this. It has given us all of that power. This is the opposition the Nigerian government has, and they are trying to pull it. Now, my concern remains that we have taken to the streets, we've shaken the government and all of that, and they have responded with more brutality. There is nothing, right now, it's like the Nigerian government is in free fall. So no matter what you do, they have just thrown their hands up, like, come what may. So what are we going to do at this point? And I'm afraid, for one who tends to give analysis and say this is the way out, this is the point where I honestly don't know, because visa ban, they don't care. Sanctions, they don't care. I don't know what it is at this point that one can throw at the Nigerian government to restore some form of sanity. And one of the major points of realizing that this downhill is pretty fast is once they get their hands on social media. If anybody has the answers, because as an activist for the past how many years, we have thrown everything. And we are now at this line. If anyone has the answers, I'm willing to listen.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. Our next theme is actually sort of visions, envisioning the future. So maybe you can get some answers once we move on to that.
Okay.
An outcome of this movement has also been the fact-finding panels that they have formed in about 20 or more states. Can we have thoughts on these fact-finding panels that are looking into accusations of police brutality? And if we could also, and police reform. If you could speak to what police reform means for different regions or different states in Nigeria. So we have the fact-finding panels and then police reform. We skipped Dr. Mo. If he's back, he could.
No, yeah, Dr. Mo.
Is he back now? Or
yeah, he's back.
Dr. Mo, are you back? And can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. So could you speak about the fact-finding panels and also about what police reform could mean for different states in Nigeria?
Okay, on the there are in Lagos, in a few states right now. Of course, there are different panels that have been set out to look into the police brutality. The research and it is still ongoing, but at the end of the day, I think different states it'll come down to constitutional review, because at the end of the day, even if you scrap SARS today, as long as the IG is the one in charge of the police, then we're still back to square one. You know, at the end of the day, that's where it's going to lead. So it comes back to the foundational issues. This cosmetic rhetoric, quick fix that we're trying to do with the changing of the names from SARS to SWAT, just like NEPA to PHCN, is not going to work at the end of the day. It's not as though the people do not understand or know what's going on. They know how brutal, and they've come to also, the government has acknowledged the fact that these people are not well trained. They know exactly what's going on. But at the end of the day, it has to be, we have to come back to constitutional review. There is too much power at the center. And at the end of the day, until each region is able to control and guide. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it has to come down to regional policing.
Okay.
Until that is done, we're not going to go anywhere, because that's where we are in a nutshell.
Thomas Jastra, excellent. Okay, very good.
Can everybody please mute yourselves if you're not talking, because some of the noise is carrying through.
Yes, I was distracted because I thought you were speaking.
No, that's fine. I think if you're unmuted, please mute yourself.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Fred. Okay.
Call people out.
So the final theme we have is also based on outcomes, what you see for the future. What solutions do you think we could implement? Realistic solutions. And I'm throwing that out to any of our scholars, because as Ndi said, the Nigerian government is in free fall. Their only direction is brutality. So what are some practical solutions? Even though some of the activists have suggested, like decentralizing the police, I think is a really good solution. But what other ways can we solve some of these problems, or at least find a pathway to solutions? So I think I'll start with Dr. Funke.
Wait, there somebody raised hand. Who's raised?
Oh,
Yeah, I did raise my hand.
Ayodele and Moju. Dr. Funke and Ayodele have their hands raised, sorry.
Okay. So let's start with Dr. Funke.
Okay, really, I think that people have to know that social movement is not easy, that there has to be the idea of tenacity. So, and you know, there's stuff that has been done, it has to be built on. I've written a lot in the chat. You know, I agree with Bulama about the role of the diaspora. That people in diaspora, especially scholars, there's a lot, well, everybody, sorry. You know, we are not actually using our knowledge and skills. And in the places where we are, you know, congregating in these foreign lands, we don't participate in the politics as if we're taxpayers. You know, I don't want America to invade Nigeria, go and help Nigeria, because that help is dangerous. But what is it that we know about organizing? What is it that we know about documentation? What is it that we can do to support people concretely with the resources they need? I think that, you know, the people at home, the activists, the protesters need to think about what they need and then communicate that clearly. And when I spoke to a few activists at a previous forum, they said they needed help with documentation, help with forensics in terms of bringing cases, help with you know, resources that people need, like phone time and whatever, help also with legal cases that would be brought before various judicial bodies. So I think that we need to kind of do that needs analysis and then coordinate, and people who are interested, some people just want to write scholarly pieces, they should really do that. Some people want to do other stuff, then they can do that, you know. And then we need to really strategize about this as an opportunity to push for freedom and equality, equity, and justice in Nigeria. Because what these protests are about is about deepening democracy, you know. And I think it's an opportunity to contribute to the well-being, development, and you know, human security of our people, you know. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ayodele, what are your views on the way forward?
All right, the first thing and most important thing is education. I believe that I don't actually believe that we can like NGO our way out of trouble, but we can at least fund education, particularly primary education in Nigeria, and find alternate teachers. There are so many young people that are unemployed right now that can be trained to go into schools. I've been running a project for the past 7 years now, and I've seen results with even the little we're able to do. So I believe so much in educating people, especially young ones, and getting more books into the hands of young people, children at the grassroots and secondary school students. The second thing I actually think we can do is speak to the colonial powers themselves, is to get enough evidence about capital flights from Nigeria to Britain, particularly Britain. I believe that if we can get all those evidence and put them together and take them to the International Criminal Court, might be a way of getting, because the truth is, like, this country is a police state. It was set up as a police state, and the end game is capitalism, and to extract as much as possible, not just from this country, from countries across Africa and from Black bodies all over the world. And if we can't put together evidence of how, I know so many people that have been like that have done research on how capital flight through corruption has been like the bane of Nigerian society. If you can trace where those monies are going to, whose pockets it's ending up into, and actually like grabbing them by the scruff of their necks, the Nigerian government is at a loss. They can't even control the police because they are not in charge of the police. And that's why they keep coming back. They keep coming back. So two major things, education and investigating capital flights out of Nigeria in particular, where it's going, who is ending up, whose pocket is ending up in. When the NGOs come and say, I did an investigation some years ago, they got the American body said they gave Nigerian government $180 million, for example. And then the Nigerian government said they gave us $140 million. And then the American...
Okay, Ayodele, you're fading out. But your point,
go.
your point is well taken. You're fading out, and I'm sure there are others who would want to contribute. Chinedu, I think you are very active. You have a suggestion, right? Briefly, if you could give it.
Yes, I'll try to make it as brief as I can. Just by following Nigerian history, I think it's time that the Nigerian government do something smart, because if we look at the history, when issues like this arise, we know what ends up happening. I think it's very pertinent that similar to how things happen here in America when activists go and demand certain things, Nigeria can be very lawless, unfortunately. But I think it's time that the government take high time and actually start putting laws and declarations that actually support the people. Suppressing the people will not help. And I think it's very important with the bill that was talking about, the social media bill. I think Nigeria should be very careful and not go down that route. We're not a communist nation. And I don't know if this is what we're learning from our biggest loan givers, China, but social media sanitization, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't work in a democracy. It doesn't work. So I don't know what type of control the government is trying to get over the people, but no matter what you do, the people will still find their way to prevail. That's just what it is. I think it's important at this time for Nigeria to take a very good look at the people. And it's not just scholarly people. And again, this is what we're learning from America, which is considered the first world. A lot of our change agents in America are everyday people, because sometimes the erudite are so high up that they can't see the issue of the person on the ground. So that is just one of my only slight suggestions, just to keep it brief.
Okay, thank you so much.
Indicator's hand is up.
Oh yes, go ahead, indeed.
With respect to the political conversation, one thing is very key. If you go to the rural areas, there's a disconnect between politics and governance. People understand things are bad, they want better, they are suffering. I come from Kaduna State. We are suffering beyond what you can even imagine. But people have not been able to marry politics and the end result of politics being something that delivers for them the better standard of living. So I think that one of the things going from here is constant education, enlightening, and making sure that the critical mass of Nigerians, while these protests are very important, it's also key to note that primarily we were middle class, upper middle class people in these protests. Poor people who came to join faced a lot of brutality. And this is why the hoodlum talk really, really upset me, because there was a straight line. There was the point where the government was sending out thugs to people. But in Lagos especially, there's a straight line between when government went on that rampage, killing a lot of people, and then poor people really reacting to that. But beyond that is that, look, if you come to Kaduna State, for example, they're dying. And when this protest comes up, it's very difficult for people to catch up. That education needs to happen, that breaking down into the grassroots, and it has to be constant and it has to be steadfast. So in our solutions, we should not forget that we are actually the minority in Nigeria. The majority of Nigerians are very poor. Of course, we are largely educated, but that is them uneducated, but that does not mean that we are ignorant or we should be subject to being ignorant. So how do we break to that level where people at that level understand that this process is something that is supposed to deliver better, and when it doesn't, there should be consequences. It's not to God we pray. We are grateful to God for his mercies, but that it's people down here that are supposed to deliver this. So that should be a key part of the conversation, grassroots penetration and education. Thank you.
right, thank you. Anybody else want to comment on this? Bulam? Oh, okay. Let's go with Hadiza first. Hadiza.
No, just an observation. I remember during the protest, I was seeing petitions for sanctions. And I kind of like, that made my blood run cold, because I was like, no, we don't want to run to Britain and America for sanctions. Look at Trump and Boris. They're not doing a good job of managing themselves. Why are we calling on them to manage what they're doing? So, and then another thing I was worried about was we couldn't see the regional differences. We couldn't see the bigger picture. We couldn't see that Nsars was just about more than police brutality. So in different regions, it would take a different coloration. I'm from Niger State. Some of our issues are we don't have roads, we don't have light, we don't have water, we don't have anything. It's really, Ansars was an umbrella for end bad governance. We've just had enough. And it's like Bulama said, it doesn't matter who you are in Nigeria, Nigeria will get you. In Hausa, we have the saying, that evil mother that will kill her children. That's Nigeria. If you're not careful, no matter who you are, it will get you eventually. And I think for me, that's the message that needs to get out there, that you're not immune. You can steal money and suffer a stroke and be taken to general hospital, you're gonna die. So if we can get something to unite people, if we the elite, because to the common man, we're all elite too. And I think that's one of the things that we fail to realize, that when this revolution starts, when this uprising starts, to engulf us all.
Yep.
If you have a Toyota, to the common man who has nothing, you are the elite. So we've reached that critical stage where the poor are eating the rich. And this is what is the scary part. And justifiably so, Nigeria doesn't work for anyone. I don't have a solution. I'm just saying, let's be careful what we ask for. Sanctions for me, give me the jitters. Getting to make a connection between Ansars and a general malaise, a general discontent with the Nigeria East, that is what our job is to everyone. How do we make sure everyone is on board? That it's not about Ansars, it's about end this nonsense that we're living with.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you.
Chika, I have a question that we should throw out to everyone.
Okay.
Now, and just talking about the way forward, there's been a lot of talk about possible things that can be done, or questions that are sort of open-ended. But even just like Hadiza said, there's a commonality to everything. There's something that's very common to what ails Nigeria, and it affects every Nigerian. And there's been discussions about harnessing the energy of Ansars towards a movement, a youth movement. It's been done. So there's this, the thing that's coming at this point for the people, the boots on ground, is that they're saying, oh, we are youth, the youth. And someone has said that youth is an identity. It's not an ideology. That label or the term youth is sort of uniting people. What sort of ideology comes out of all the discussions about education, healthcare, good governance? What would be the type of ideology that can sort of be attached to this identity that has united all Nigerians?
Okay, Chinedu.
I think, to be honest, and this is just maybe me being a little cavalier, I think the greatest thing that unites Nigerians is that all Nigerians are hardworking, and all Nigerians, as far as I know, love Nigeria. And if we can stick on that path, and it sounds so dreamlike, but in saying this, I'm reminiscing on how Dr. Martin Luther King had a dream. Like, if Nigeria can just stay on the path of being as proud as we are, Nigeria is the most successful Black group in America, period. These are facts. If we can stay that course, and maybe I just keep having to say it, because if you don't revisit history, you fail to repeat it. We have to revisit Nigeria's origins. Nigeria's origins is the reason why we keep unraveling, because every decade Nigeria does the same thing over and over. Since 1958, it's been going on in different ways. And I just strongly, just give it real quick, 10, 20 seconds. I just strongly think that this impasse we're at right now is a pivotal movement where the people of Nigeria, your working class people, can come together to be strong. I'm going to keep it honest. We learned all that elitism from the British. I mean, Fela said that in his music. We learned that from them, and they created this chaos, created this hoopla, and then they leave. And then call us barbaric when we are fighting for our own democracy. We have to get smarter and do what works for Nigeria, not for the eyes of the American people, not for the eyes of anybody else, but what works best for the Niger folk. That's all I have to say.
Okay, good. Anybody else want to chip in? Dr. Obi, no talk from you.
Well, since I spoke a lot the first
time,
I thought it was only natural that I allow other participants to have the floor. I'll just say something very brief. I think at the heart of all this is a question of power. Power for who? At the end of the day, what we have is a system of politics that disempowers the majority. So what do you do? Both theoretically, practically, in terms of activism, we should begin to think creatively of ways of re-empowering the majority. It's going to call for a completely new brand of democratic politics. And probably this will be Nigeria and Africa's contribution to help unlocking the situation with what people usually refer to as democracy. A new brand of people-centric democracy that really empowers ordinary people and really helps them become, in every sense of the word, equal citizens.
Okay, thank you. Short and brief.
Yeah, I want to contribute.
Okay, let's go with Moses first and then Bulama. Go ahead.
Okay, a lot has to be done, even in terms of, even though it comes under education, but is a lot of campaign for the poor and group of people that Nigeria has produced, that the politicians easily use and take advantage of. Those that are referred to as the hoodlums. It's our responsibility to be able to bring them up to speed. The good thing is that this is so easy to do. But again, like, I don't know who said that, we need a lot of help from those of you out there in the diaspora, because we have a lot of organizations who aren't reaching out to these grassroots people, but are getting a lot of funding. While you have a lot of us who are in the trenches and are bringing real value to these people, but probably we do not know what to do in terms of how to position ourselves to be able to get the kind of funding that is required. I give you a very classical example of what we did. I led a team and we were able to use, we did an event called Countering Violent Extremism in Borno State. And we're able to reach these people. These everyday street people, they're very easy to change and reach, but we have to intensify on the campaign to be able to reach them. I remember at a time we were in Kano, and instead of saying, "Say Baba," we reached out to one of the guys right there in the crowd, and I said, "What's your name?" And he said, "Ibrahim." And I said, "Say Ibrahim, not say Baba. Baba is done his own. Say Ibrahim." You know, and you could see right then and then there's an immediate effect in the thinking process of these people. We can reach them, because if we don't get them converted, these are the same people. I mean, right here in the street of Abuja, they pay them just as low as 500 naira to come in with their machetes and clubs to come and take us out of the street. This is the other thing that you're doing, and we have to reach them. We can't reach them. We can get, there are events, creative programs that we have developed that can reach these people, but we have to also cover the gap of funding to be able to reach the grassroots and these people, it can be done, because at the end of the day, what Nigerians are asking for, just like Hadiza said, are just the basics of things. You know, they just want to live. They just want to be able to stay in their houses and have electricity, and not to be using lamps like I'm doing. Just basic. They want to be able to go to school. They want to be able to move on the street and not be attacked by people. They want to be able to go to the farms and not be killed by the herdsmen. Asking for just basic things. And if we don't reach these people and convert them, then there's this huge group of people that the politicians and those up there will always keep taking advantage of. So that's part of what I know that is very, very eminent and required to do. And we can do that. We already have programs, you know, but we need funding. And like I said, probably some of us are handicapped in the area of positioning ourselves to be able to receive what is required to get this job done.
Okay. Bulama, and then we'll start winding down.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to pick up on some of the points made, and I will be as quick as I can so I can touch on as many points as possible. The first is around the issue several people have raised around the lack of intellectual base. For me, lack of solid intellectual base is the first formula for the failure of any movement. And we have seen the youth on the street. We have made it an adage to say Nigeria will never be the same again, but I can tell you it will be the same again unless we keep the momentum. And the way to keep the momentum is to do hard intellectual work upon which the demands will be grounded. Otherwise, we are going nowhere. And I don't see that kind of work being done by anyone. And I think it's very important. The second issue is around Indies and Hadiza's comments around, the international community, especially Western governments. And for me, nothing scares the Nigerian government and its politicians like Western intervention. When people talk about sanctions, they aren't talking about sanctions on Nigeria. They are talking about sanctions against Buhari, against the Inspector General of Police, and nothing can be effective like that. Nothing will scare the hell out of Buhari like him knowing that he can never visit London again to see his doctors, because he knows he would die in the next 6 months if he doesn't come to London. Nothing scares Nigerian politicians like them knowing that their children wouldn't go to Europe and US to study. So if you get a sanction against them and their family, or that threat, nothing scares them like that. And it's going to be effective. And that's why, since the protest, I have engaged with the UK, the High Commission in Abuja. I have engaged with the EU delegation to Nigeria. Aside of sanctions, they also fund the Nigerian government, including the police. They give them a lot of money. Some people have called for that funding, that financial support to stop. But for me, the way to go is not to stop the funding. It is to continue the funding, because that's the leverage you have to require the changes you need. And the final point is around this issue of regionalization raised by someone I can't remember, and Chinedu's point that Nigeria was set up in a way to work for the North. And those kinds of divisive rhetoric will not take us anywhere. Nigeria is not working for the North. In fact, the Nigeria we have today was the brainchild of Nnamdi Azikiwe. Awolowo wanted an arrangement in which the federating units can break away when they want. They wanted it inserted in the constitution, the AC. It was the AG, it was the NCNC, Awolowo's party, that stood against that and argued in Lagos and then in the extended conference in London that they want a Nigeria that will be indivisible. The current arrangement of the policing system we have was the brainchild of Ironsi. Ironsi argued forcefully against state police or regional police because he saw the danger. Do you want to trust the Nigerian governors with our security? Look at the state electoral commissions we have. They are the extension of the office of the governors. And now we are saying the police is brutal and we want them handed over to governors, the same governors we have in Nigeria today. And I think all these suggestions are exposing the lack of substantive argument around what we want. The Nigeria Police Force, was set up by the colonialists, and the law they are using today is the 1943 Police Act, 1943. It continues today, and so in the colonial time and after independence, the police saw their duty, the first duty is protecting the regime, protecting the elite. Now, we are in a democratic Nigeria. We should be asking for substantive discussion around rearranging the police, changing the colonial mentality that was layered with the military mentality, and then moving towards community policing. These are the kinds of arguments we should be having. I think if we go down the route of the default thinking of regionalism whenever we are talking about issues, we are not going to succeed.
So thank you very much, Bulama. This is just a beginning of the conversation, because as you can see, the problem is very complicated, and we're not going to solve everything in one day. We appreciate all your contributions. This has been really enlightening. And for one thing, we do know that we need to change the way we think. We all need to be united. Nigeria, as it is now, is basically here to stay. I don't see a situation where we're breaking up. We have to figure out how we can all live together within this. Well, it is an experiment. It's more experimental than the United States, because it's a whole bunch of people thrown together and told to live together by force. So we are going to have to figure this out, but we're not going to find the solutions today. We thank all of you for your contributions, and we'll give another like 15 minutes for everybody to give some kind of closing remark or summary of what they feel we should do going forward. Chinedu?
Yeah, sorry, I have to go. I have to jump on another call.
That's not a problem. Anybody who needs to go.
All I just wanted to say, and I appreciate my brother Bulama, I think I'm pronouncing that right. I think I'm a young gentleman, 28 years old. I think the greatest future of our great nation is this discussion, even if it's discourse. And this is something that I've learned in America, that a Republican and a Democrat can disagree so vehemently on the Senate floor, but then go out to get beer or go out to get dinner or go to each other's events. I think as progressing as a Nigerian people, we have to be able to disagree, but still love each other in our disagreement, no matter what goes on. And I'm hoping that is the future of the Nigeria that I will share with my kids, that we can disagree, but still be unified in the green, white, green that keeps us all the same. God bless you all. I'll put my website once more in if anybody wants to stay in contact. And I'm honored to be on the call with all of y'all. And may God bless you, bless our country, bless the spirit of Nigeria.
Thank you, Chinedu.
Thank you, Chinedu.
Okay.
So well said.
Yes, very much so.
So, Rita.
Well, you had sort of thrown it open for people to give their final thoughts on the way forward.
Yeah, may I chip in there real quick?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much. I just posted on our NSA WhatsApp group that this is a very, very rewarding experience. And I'm sure each of you must have taken one thing away from this conversation. It is simply priceless. One thing I would like to conclude with is to plead with each and every one of us to work on dismantling the agents of division that is created to keep us apart. All right. I went to the University of Jos. I have a lot of good friends from the North. Some of my best friends are Muslims. I became my best job in Nigeria was through somebody from Borno State. okay, who was my classmate at Unijust. My best friend today is a Yoruba lady who is from Ogun State. When we get together, we talk, we chat, we eat, we drink. Some of these older members of the society who are politicians, who are up there in high places, they are very good friends. When they get together to take away what we collectively own, they don't think about where each person comes from. So they use people who are not educated. They use the youths who are very gullible to create problems for us. So we must find a way to please work on coming together. And there are more things that unite us than divide us. Our NSA team is, when we meet as a team, we don't think of where each person comes from. And that is where I want the youths of our nation to be. I would like us to come together and work on fighting the common enemy instead of using those divisive strategies that have continued to divide the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Okoro. Would anyone else like to?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is anyone speaking?
Yes, yes, I'm here. I'm speaking.
Okay. So, Dr. Mo, then Ndi, I see that you wanted to speak also. Okay.
Yeah, so I know that definitely this is not the forum to begin to debate on some of the things that we just touched on, because like we said, SARS was just a gateway to the many root problems that we have. It is totally clear that we can see that we are divided, or the people who use the tool of region, religion, and ethnicity only use it to be able to divide us. That being said, and very clearly, I would request for a forum where I can clearly be able to share in detail, and we can dive into where issues of our fundamental problems, where if you go back to the Constitution, but that's going to take a whole lot of time right now. You know, this conglomerate, this marriage that we have is not balanced, and some of us have done a very good work. And if we have the right time, we can help to X-ray and help some people see it, because I've lived in the North all my life, you know, and I've been outside. I've been in Lagos. I've been all over the region, and I'm on the ground. I'm in the trenches. So sometimes you need to listen to some of us. It's not just theoretical. These are very deep root causes. And I understand very much how region, religion, and ethnicity is being used. But that being said, there is a fundamental problem that we have to look at, because, again, we can't gloss over it anymore. If you remove SARS, the problem is not removed, because whether you come back to education, whether you come back to agriculture, whatever it is you do, if we don't solve this deep-rooted problem for why we are together, because we have to understand that unity is not sameness. We have to have respect. We are always going to be different people. We're going to be Igbo, we're going to be Yorubas, we're going to be Fulanis, we're going to be all these people. We're never going to be the same people. But fundamental issues of respect for one another, where a certain group does not feel like they are, because this is what we see, and the time is ripe and is right here for us to face this enemy beyond the enemy of ethnicity, religion, and region. There is a fundamental crack that must be sealed. And I will request for a time so that we can dive into that and be able to look at it critically. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mo. Kate.
What I would like to speak here is, with respect to the Nigerian conversation, we have to make a deliberate effort to be sincere with respect to these conversations. Nigeria and everything we talk about and everything we try to do always ends up glossing over things. And I remember the last time I saw, you know, the talk, I think it was from the president, unity in our diversity. And I think if I would call all of us to sit down, right, and define what that means within the Nigerian context, and what Nigeria has gone through in the past couple of years, I don't think anybody will be able to answer properly. You know, the things that unite us are more than those that put us apart. Statements like that, the thing that unites us is the oil in the Niger Delta. Let's be very, very clear about that. And, you know, what the people in that region go through for us to actually mine that oil, dig it, and use it for the rest of the country. And so when we're talking about these things and we just want to keep, you know, let us, and every time we finish talking and the same issues, it's kind of like where I come from. We have the peace and conflict resolution committees, and then the elders and people who are not really affected by this come and have these meetings, and then they now sign the peace accord, and then they go, and that night fight happens. It means that in that conversation there was no sincerity. It means that things were glossed over and solutions, the reality of what is on ground, was not addressed. So when we are talking about Nigeria, I think it would be very, very good for us to have key conversations. What people are talking about are not alien fantasies. It's their reality. When a person says, I come from here, and my reality in where I come from is that my people are being wiped out in a certain way. It is the reality of that person. It's not divisive rhetoric. It is reality. Nigeria is a brutal state. We all come under this brutality for one reason or the other. My reason as a Southern Kaduna person will be different from your reason as an Igbo person, a Niger Delta person, or a Hausa person. But we all have these reasons. And when we say that, oh, let's not, you know, or try to silence these reasons, we come back again to the table the next time and come to have the conversation. And then the next time again, and then we put the very good phrases, unity in diversity and all that, and we still do not address the truth. Thankfully, we're still hearing more and more conversations. I saw a story about the Baramatu massacre under Yaradua on social media, and it was brutal. We don't hear about it. In fact, we come and say, I've never seen this kind of thing in Nigeria before. Oh my God, the Lekki massacre. I remembered saying myself erroneously that, wow, we are gradually becoming Southern Anglophone Cameroon. But we have always been Anglophone Cameroon. And if you hear the Niger Delta stories, we have even been worse than what is happening in Anglophone Cameroon. But you know what we are good at doing? Glossing over it. So that when this thing now happens in the center of one elite area, we're like, oh my God, how did this happen? But this is our reality. And if we don't accept it and lay it bare and naked and have these difficult conversations, we're not going to go anywhere. Too many people are dying on our need to be politically correct. And that shouldn't be happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Adisa.
Okay.
I think for
okay,
me,
go ahead.
Okay, I was just saying we haven't really thanked our panelists for coming on board. So on behalf of the NSA, I'd just really like to thank all of you for accepting our invitations and for coming on board. I'd like to reiterate that we have really learned so much. There's a lot of conversations and discussions still to be had. Some of them are difficult because I think we all build a shield and we carry historical trauma. And I think that's part of the things that we forget, that with us is this trauma that we have inherited that we haven't really quite explored. And we also believe in Project Nigeria in one way or the other. We are invested in Nigeria. So we're even afraid to have these difficult conversations, lest we threaten what we have. But we have to have them at some point. We have to find the language for them. We have to actively unlearn some of the things that we have learned. But just on behalf of the NSA, I'd really like to thank all of you for coming on board, and hopefully we can carry on with these conversations in the future. Thank you.
I mean, that is the plan. We plan to have a series of these conversations because like we've already stated, documentation of these issues needs to take place. And those of us who cannot be on the ground, this is one way we can help. So I think it's appropriate. If anybody else has anything to say, we'll probably close it. Dr. Funke, you have something?
Yes. Okay. So the reason I was kind of going on and on about the women's war and the past history is precisely part of what Ndi is saying, that our history matters. And it's actually violent to all our psyches to forget many of those histories. And then every time something happens, people think that they're doing something unique and different. Meanwhile, if we build on the historical positive historical legacies of struggle that we have, we'll actually be more successful. Also, I mean, honest uncovering of all our problems, warts and all, you know, is necessary if we're going to solve these problems. And then we must realize that what we're trying to do is build a nation. It is not easy. It's not easy anywhere. You know, and this myth that the West has done whatever, if you look at the Black Lives Matter movement, you can see that America is actually very similar to Nigeria, okay? You can see that the UK is very similar. But what you have in those places is that you have the establishment of the kind of hegemony that many of the venal elites in Nigeria want to establish, you know, without also, I mean, if we see people here being able to struggle and protest and whatever, people shed blood for that to happen in this country's history, and people are still shedding blood. You know, so we have to realize that these are very difficult struggles. So we should realize that, you know, tenacity and a long-term perspective is what we need. And each of us can take different slices in terms of what we really feel passionate about in the project, because it's a long-term struggle and we need all hands on deck.
Thank you so much. Rita, do you have anything to add?
Well, just would like to thank everyone, our scholars, our activists that are on ground and are living this reality. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us today. And Chika, as you said, this is the first in a series. And hopefully we can continue to have more of these types of conversations and actually maybe hopefully begin to network and collaborate with the youth that are in Nigeria to make a difference, to sort of actually actionalize things that we're talking about so that it's not just all talk. But thank you everyone for taking the time. Thank you to African Studies Association, Nigerian Studies Association, everyone, for being here with us today. Thank you so very much.
So you can listen briefly to Unknown Soldier.
Oh, one more thing. Chika, please, like I said, let's not just, after this, go our different ways.
No,
Please,
no.
I would like to ask if your emails can be shared. Chika will be reaching out so that we can all stay in touch with each other.
And as you all noted, we need to keep the pressure on. We need to actually get something out of this. Like, let it not all be talk.
Yeah. So let's just begin to communicate with each other in different ways. If you're on Twitter, we'll begin to follow you and things like that. We'll find you on Facebook so that we begin to speak the language of the youth, like Chika said. So,
okay.
And to add to that, if you're not a member of NSA, please register with us and be part of be a bigger part of this whole process to move Nigeria forward. All right, so please get in touch with us and we will make you a valuable member of our team.
Yeah, I think all of you have my email address. Just drop me a line, let me know what's going on. Because of Ansars, I now use my Twitter account. So you've achieved something.
That's right.
Same here. I'll be following all of you.
I'll be following all of you.
Well done. Well done.
And thank you very much to our moderators. You guys did a good job.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Bye.
These
Bye-bye.
are hard times. Stay safe.
Stay safe. Be well.
Be well.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.